Creators, you're not that important. Now that the dust has settled, I'm gonna break down something that you've probably not heard from Cannes Lions, the recaps. I intentionally waited for all of those emotional reaction posts to go up, and some from very, key figures in the industry. But I want you to lock into what I'm about to share with you, because while the carpet seemed to be rolled out for creators, and on the surface it seemed like those shiny faces from the internet ruled the corset, I'm going to tell you the truth about how this ad machine actually really works. Because someone asked, why do they spend those hundreds of thousands of dollars on those beach activations, wrapping buildings in their logos, taking over lobbies and event spaces at those luxury hotels along the beach? Well, creators, you've just got here. They've been actually doing this for years. And although some of the brands that ruled the real estate have changed, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, the biggest transactions by the most important players at the most influential global companies were not at the back at that creator's beach or whatever that was. No shade to it. But in fact, I want to tell you that they didn't even really care what happened over there. Not that much. Real power and influence happened in plain sight by plain looking people without those Osmo pockets and mini mics. And many of them weren't even on those stages. Yes, many front-facing CMOs of very important companies and brands were on stages, but there were so many more big players who were not in the stages. And you probably might have been standing next to them in the queues when you're standing in line to get into some of those fancy places, and you may have missed your opportunity to genuinely connect with folks who could level up your career for years to come. But that's okay, you didn't know. And all of that creator noise, it was loud. So let's talk about it. Hi friends, welcome to the rewatch. I have a feeling that this video is gonna ruffle some feathers. So let me just tell you what gives me the right to say what I'm about to say about this big conference. It's not a list of awards, it's not LinkedIn, just this. I've been going to Cannes Lions for the past several years, not just attending. Our production company, Dream Network Media, hosts a cohort that is in partnership with Cannes Lions. And we actually bring professionals into the rooms with the people who run global campaigns for the biggest brands in the world. And some of those people are actually my friends. And we had these conversations. These people are global leads. They are the ones who decide where the hundreds of millions actually go. So that's the vantage point that I'm bringing in this video. And reminder, this video is not to shame you or to diminish the experience that you had. It's actually to bring awareness so that the next time you go, you actually know the play to make. All right, so let's talk about it. What is Cannes Lions exactly? So for those who don't know, Cannes Lions is the advertising industry's biggest event in the world. By the way, did you know the nickname is called Adland? It's often also referred to as the Oscar of the ads. It's their Super Bowl every year in June. The city of Cannes, yes, the same place where that film festival is, it gets taken over by a completely different crowd. Well, some of the faces are the same. Some of the celebrities still show up, but the main audience is about 15,000 delegates from more than 90 countries. This is chief marketing officers, global creative directors, media buyers, agency leads, platform executives, the people who decide where the billions of dollars in advertising actually go. So for decades, it was almost entirely an agency and brand event. The suits, the acronyms that I just named, the handshakes behind closed doors, and award shows honoring the best advertising campaigns in the world. Deals were being made right there on the beach. Now recently, and this is the part that matters to you guys, the creators started showing up, and Cannes Lions leaned into it. Creator stages, creator badges, they have a particular voice in this whole machine that we're going to unpack. Now, let me tell you how new this is. The first creator badge was only introduced in 2024, then followed the creator panels, and then the narrative going into 2026 was that it was going to be the year of the creator, and we heard those phrases like fandom and audience triggers all across the stages. And the biggest distraction or attraction of them all are the flashy fringe events. That's the fun and flashy things, and I get it. It's those beach clubs, the brand activations. We're getting tattoos at Pinterest. We're making things at Canva. The parties that go to sunrise, those fancy villas, all of that is real, and it all is designed to be a highlight reel because these are marketing pros. But there is also an actual award show, and I'm not saying that I didn't see creators go, but I didn't see creators go to that. That's just my own point of view, and I think it's a shame and a missed opportunity. Let's talk about the awards. Here's why. The Lions are the whole point. The festival started in 1954 as literally just an award show for advertising film. One trophy, that's it. Everything else, the panels, the beaches, the creator stages, grew around that original ceremony. And the trophies are still the center, even if you didn't center it in your trip. And this is what I want creators to understand about what a lion actually means. There are thousands of advertising agencies around the world, all competing for the same brand budgets. So as it was explained to me, when a Fortune 500 company is deciding who gets to run their next global campaign, potentially worth tens of millions of dollars, how do they know who is actually good? How do they separate the agencies that can deliver world-class creative from the ones that just say that they can? A lion is the answer to that question. Oh, but to even enter, both the CEO of an agency and the CMO of the brand have to sign off on the submission for the campaign that they're entering. And it's not a self-nomination free-for-all. The brand has to publicly say, yes, we stand behind this work. Then every entry goes through an initial review, gets scored individually by jurors on a scale of 1 to 9. It gets shortlisted, it gets cut, and then it goes through a live judging session on site at the festival. And this is where jurors can't vote on anything their own network was involved in. There are bias training requirements. There is a chain of custody for every entry. And if you have a pass, that pass worth thousands of dollars, by the way, you can peek in and watch the judging. Agencies spend thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars on submissions, because they're not entering to just win the trophy. They are entering to win the business that comes after the trophy. Hey, ask me about trophies. I know about the business that comes after you win the trophies. So a friend of mine who is a global lead at one of these top agencies put it plainly. A Cannes lion is the differentiator. When a brand is reviewing 10 agency decks and one of them has a lions and 9 of them don't, that changes the conversation. That award is proof. It's independent, internationally recognized, a rigorously judged, proofed credential that this agency has produced work that meets the highest global standard for creativity. And the craziest thing that I love to observe at these award shows every year is that normally rival agencies will partner with each other specifically to assemble the kind of work that can compete. They collaborate on campaigns they wouldn't otherwise touch together because the lion justifies the effort, and that credential lasts for years. And so when the award is won, 10 to 20 people go on stage to collect it. By the way, knowing all of this, I want to give a shout out to my friends from Black and Abroad who won a Lions in 2019. And when they won, I knew it was a good thing. But when I started getting involved myself with Cannes Lions is when I truly appreciated how big of a deal that is. So while everyone was posting about what creator they saw at the beach activation, the real wins from Cannes was happening at the award ceremony in the conversations that happened after someone picked up the Grand Prix. Okay, so the flashy stuff does get the content. The award ceremony gets the careers. Listen, but did you guys go? I know you went to the villas and the yacht parties. I went to the villas and the yacht parties too. But I also dedicated time at the Palais, and it's worth it. Next time you go, dedicate some time at the Palais des Festivals. That is the main venue, the conference center right on the Croisette, where the actual sessions, the keynotes, and the award ceremonies hosted by Cannes Lions happen. It's the access that you actually get with your pass. If you had a creator pass, you had access to this. By the way, it's an air-conditioned retreat if you need a midday break. It's not as glamorous, and it doesn't photograph as well as the rosé on the yacht, but that's where the real education lives. If you are serious about this creator career as a real business, making yourself your own agency, then watch a bit of the judging. You don't have to stay the whole time, but go in, pop in, and watch the judging. Go to one of the panels hosted inside of the Palais. Go and roam the halls and see the work that's done, and go to at least one of the award shows. All right, I'm not done yet, because let's talk about how the machine actually works. Because I had a conversation at Cannes with one of my closest friends. She is a global lead for one of the biggest consumer brands in the world. I'm talking about a brand that you interact with regularly, probably every day. Now, she told me something that literally opened this whole thing up for me. In fact, I told her that, by the way, she needed to check her contract, because she could be sharing these gems and become a superstar insider online as a creator herself. But in the meantime, you have me to share this stuff with you. You've probably heard of the rule of 7, the idea that a consumer needs to see your brand 7 times before they take action, 7 exposures. That's been kind of marketing gospel for decades. She told me it's 300. 300 times of exposure before a consumer reaches the level of brand trust and comfort that makes them buy automatically. Not consider, not research, automatically reach for it. And I want you to really sit with that and also think about what that means, because she gave me the perfect example. So she said, let's imagine you walk into a grocery store in a country where you don't speak the language. The signs don't make sense. The packaging looks totally different. Even the smells smell different. Everything is unfamiliar. How do you decide what to get? Well, naturally, you're going to gravitate to what looks familiar, what feels nostalgic, what your brain recognizes even before you consciously process why. That has to do with colors, that has to do with packaging, that has to do with everything. That recognition, that comfort, that's not an accident. That's the result of hundreds of exposures over years, sometimes decades of intentional brand investment. And that, my friends, is what these companies are buying at Cannes. Not a single campaign, not a moment. The slow, relentless accumulation of familiarity that makes their product feel like home anywhere in the world. So I hope you hear this as creators, because how does this actually work for you in your life? First of all, it's just to open up your eyes to understand how this really works. Because to get there, they have layers upon layers of teams. They have strategists, media buyers, data analysts, creative directors, all of them mapping out where our attention goes and figuring out how to be there before you even are looking. That might not directly apply to your brand, but this is insight on how you move when you are working with a brand. Millions of dollars are flowing, baby, at a level that most of us can't even conceptualize. And the stakes are enormous because brand equity built over generations can erode fast if the wrong message hits the wrong audience at the wrong moment. And we've seen this in real time with the World Cup and the USA's involvement and hydration breaks by Powerade. So with all of this machinery running, the strategy, the research, the media buying, the creative development, where do creators fit? So that's the question I asked another friend at Cannes Lion, who is a big time position for another big time company. I don't want to give too many details. I'll tell you exactly where, and hold on for this one, because she said, I actually don't care about creators. I just give our influencer team their budget and don't bother me with the rest. Just hit the target. Okay. She's not saying she doesn't care about the role creators play. Let me break down what she is actually saying. But before that, keep that in mind, because she is a global lead. And if you ever meet a global lead from an agency, keep in mind that that might not be the person who really will care about the details of your pitch. They might actually get bored with it because they're dealing with the bigger parts of the whole machine, right? She says she outsources it to somebody whose entire job is to care about that. And that's the person that you're going to be looking for. The person on their team that deals with creator and influencer spend. There is an entire infrastructure of spending that most of us never see. Global advertising spend is about $1 trillion a year. So the foundation is search. If you've done some sort of blog or online content, you might have a basic understanding of SEO, and that's fine. That is generally what they're spending, but on a bigger scale. When you type in something into Google, there's that multi-billion-dollar auction happening in milliseconds to determine which brand gets in front of you. Search advertising is the single largest channel, roughly about 40% of all digital spend. These brands are buying the moment that you're already looking for, and that's not cheap. That's also not a creator budget. Then there's programmatic advertising. You know, those are the ads that seem to follow you around the internet after you looked at something or even said something in your phone. That's not magic. We know that the algorithm is already working to do all of that. That is something that is spent on. Programmatic advertising now accounts for about 90% of all digital display spend. Then there's television, still massive. Antiquated? No, still has the biggest audience. Then there's out of home, the billboards you see driving on the highway, the airport ads, the wrapped buses, the stadium naming rights. These are the channels that have been running for decades and still carry enormous weight for mass brand awareness. Wait, but I'm not done yet. Then there's retail media. Retail media is now a $140 billion channel, meaning brands are spending directly on Amazon, Walmart, and Instacart to reach you at the exact moment you are about to make a purchase decision. And this goes on, and this is just the top layer, but by the time all of this is planned, bought, trafficked, measured, and optimized, the campaign is running about 80%. And then they look around and say, these are the global leads. And they say, where is that last mile? Who can we put in front of the audience to make this brand reach the people we need authentically? Who has the trust we can't buy through programmatic platforms? And that's where we come in. We get the budget that takes a campaign from 80% to 100%. Not because we're not valuable, we are authentic human voices with very specific audiences, and our audiences trust us. That's real, and brands know it. And this is why the red carpet was rolled out. And this is why all the fanciness that we saw at Cannes Lions happened. So when I say creators, you're not that important, I mean, in the scale of 100, where we get 20%, that is where we stand. The machine is already moving. We're important, but this is the piece of the pie where we live. And this video is to have an honest conversation about where we are in this ecosystem. We're not the foundation. We're not the strategy. We're the finishing layer. We're the last mile. And it's a good ego check for us. It's important. We all are familiar with relay races in track and field. We know how important the first, the second, and the third runners are, but we also know how important the anchor is. And consider us, the creators, the anchor. So there was a good handful of creators at Cannes thinking that they were missing something. They were not the main event. They got frustrated constantly. I saw it. I heard it because the machine wasn't built around them. Parts of it was, but when they got out of that bubble, then they realized it wasn't. But there were also some all-star creators that I met who knew exactly where they fit. Something else I heard people complaining about or just giving feedback is that Cannes was paying too much attention to creators. Now, I personally didn't experience it in that way, but that conversation was happening. And what I think it points to is something real. Creators showed up to Cannes expecting to be treated as the main event. And then the industry looked at them and said, you are welcome here. We're happy to add you to the room, but this isn't your room yet. Now, the prevailing narrative is that the creator influence will only grow from here, and I don't disagree with that, but I do think that there is a version of the conversation that isn't telling you the whole truth. At least from the Cannes recaps that I've been seeing, brands aren't going to shift their core dollars to creators. The foundation of the machine, everything that we just went through in this video, the broadcast, the out of home, the programmatic, that's not all going to creators. That's that 80%, and that's not changing hands, at least not yet. What is going to grow, what I predict and what others predict, is that 20% might grow to maybe 30%. That would be great. The 20% is already great, and that's meaningful. It just means that we get a larger slice of that finishing budget, but it's not a strategic seat at the table, at least not for most brands. I do know of smaller brands that lead with their marketing strategy with creators. And those are usually smaller, independent, privately held companies, I will say. Here's another example of how that creator spend works into that whole 100%. Another CMO, and she's at a big agency, she said the spend that they now give to creators used to be spent on radio. So the influencer of old, the radio guys, are now the new creators who are on social media. So remember that video I said of somebody walking in the corset and saying, what is this all for? And that question tells you everything. It tells you that the people asking weren't actually in the right rooms. And it's kind of crazy because the woman posting that claimed to be a marketing vet. So I was a little confused by that. But one of my friends, when I told her, I actually showed her that clip and she laughed. Actually, we're sitting on a couch and she fell on the floor laughing. That's another story. She said, what, are you serious? Because we talked about the Lions Award and we talked about how this all works, and they are actually having meetings. My friends who came, they came to have meetings. The fun, the yachts, the gifts, the rosé is all a part of it, and they enjoy it. But they were constantly on their phones talking to their bosses back at the main shop, setting up those meetings. And in fact, one of them reported back something that they watched with their own eyes, and I think it was at Spotify Beach, and it was a growing startup who closed a $500,000 deal with their vendor right there in plain sight, no announcement, just sitting in their linen pants, trying to stay cool from the heat wave that was taking over. Because this was a conversation that started before Cannes Lions, and then the handshake happened while they were trying to stay cool from that Euro heat wave. Just a few people who were circling each other months before, and then Cannes was the room where that finally closed. So that's what Cannes Lions is for. That's what those hundreds of thousands of dollars of beach activations and hotel lobby takeovers are really buying. Not just the eyeballs, but the proximity to have in real life conversations with the right people in the same place. And it gives you social permission to do it all. And it looks fun and fancy and it's pretty and all of that because they're ads, they're marketing. It's all for the show. This is their lane and their business. And I'm going back year after year after year because it's worth it. It is nothing like I've ever experienced. I had a friend compare it to South by Southwest. It's not. It's different. This is different. First of all, that's in Texas. This is in the Côte d'Azur. So it's the plain looking people that I mentioned at the top of this video, the ones without all the fancy creator gear, without the ones with bodyguards walking them through. Some of them had the authority to write a check that could change our entire careers. And I remember being in the line at a Netflix screening and people were busy trying to see which way Paris Hilton or Oprah went. If you went to Cannes and you only collected party stamps and a wristband full of entry passes, then you went to the south of France on an influencer trip that you paid for. And that sounds expensive. And perhaps you didn't play the game right. But again, no shade. We're all learning here. All right, so let me leave you with 5 things that you can actually do with everything that we talked about here about Cannes Lions and even beyond when you're at important conferences where there are playmakers in the room. Because actually moving forward, I know you're going to take everything I just told you and level up. So first, stop pitching your follower count, right? Start pitching that last mile. You're the anchor. You know you're the anchor. So you're going to lead with that point of view in your conversation. It's not going to be about how many people follow you. You're not selling your reach. You're selling that you're the one to take this campaign to the finish line. Number 2, price yourself as a closer, not just as a contractor. If a brand is already spending millions on something, try to figure out where you are in the midst of this campaign. That's going to take a little bit of research. You're going to have to look online to see about the message that they're trying to have you say in their brief. Where has it existed before? How long have they been talking about it? And try to figure out your place in that. And then know what you can deliver and then price yourself accordingly. 3, let's try to figure out how we can apply that 300 exposure principle to your own brand. 300 exposure. How does that work? Is this in conversations on Reddit? Is this in conversations on LinkedIn? How can you get your voice and your values and your visual identity to sink in like the major brands do, to get that natural comfort? Do they identify you with a particular color? I have a friend who wears hot pink for every single thing. She's been committed to this for at least 10 years. And so when they see this woman, they know exactly who she is, what she's about to talk about. Number 4, now that you understand who the most powerful person in the room might be, it might not be that person who's on stage. When you enter a room, sit back and scope to see who's observing not only the stage, but who's observing the reactions. See if you could see who's the boss, and then try to figure out a natural, cool conversation to make yourself a memory to stand out above the crowd. And 5, just make sure that you're clear on your function. I think many creators are still trying to figure out what they are, but if you can walk into any room already knowing what you are, what you're not, and what you're worth, then that clarity is rare. And I think a brand feels that immediately. And then that gives you a competitive advantage. Now, this is just very much still the surface. And I know we talked about a lot, but there's so much more. So I collaborated with 3 of my friends who are global marketing leads at top agencies. And we built the pitch and price brand deals like a closer guide. And this is something that you can use immediately. This is not a course. This is not a membership. This is just a PDF download that is going to have real actionable steps that you could check off. It's going to include a check of your brand pitch around this closer, around this last mile positioning, a self audit for your current content strategy, and guidance on how to price yourself when you finally actually understand what you're selling. So the link is in the description. I'm not going to oversell this. It's available for you if you're interested. And if this video hit differently than you expected, then drop me a comment. Tell me your biggest takeaway. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll see you in the next one.